the community level. To deliberate further on the topic, we have eminent speakers amongst us today to bring forward the pertinent issues confronting the empowerment and role of education. I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the inaugural session. To begin with, let me take privilege to introduce Dr. Amit Gupta Sir, Chairman, Jagannath International Management School, Kalkaji. Dr. Amit Gupta Sir is a nationally renowned educationist, an outstanding scholar, iconic entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. He's an alumni of both SRCC and IIFT. His PhD in international business is from IP University. Inspired by the ideal of making education meaningful to the times, he laid the foundation of the GEMS Group, modern, professionally run education group, 3 decades back. The group has since then established 9 higher education institutes and 2 private state universities in states of Delhi, Haryana, UP, and Rajasthan. Dr. Amit Gupta Sir is a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, Rotary International, and Round Table. A recent feather in his cap was being honored with the prestigious Outstanding Rotarian Award for serving humanity. May I now call upon Sir to please give the welcome address to our audience.
Thank you, Sanya. It's a pleasure in seeing all the women, the ones who have really led so many prestigious academic institutions, smiling faces. And I welcome especially Professor Simrath Kaur, Professor Kavita, Professor Shanli Devan, Dr. Urvashi, and others. Well, to begin with, I can say with a lot of pride that at GEMS, we have more than 50% of students who are girls. So I think that's the starting point, like Sanya just mentioned, of development and empowerment of women. Education is the key to change the thought process of the society. And I'm really happy to say that every year at GEMS, we have more than 7,000 girls who are studying in different campuses. Also, if you would realize that India has both, one side really kept women away from professional development, and also on the other side, worshipped women. We have Lord Saraswati, we have Lourdes Lakshmi, we have Lourdes Durga. So on one side, we are really worshipping women, and on the other side, we are not ensuring that we give them enough opportunities to develop. So this is the paradox of the society which we have to overcome. Over the last 40, 50 years, especially, all across tier 1 and tier 2 cities, we have seen a lot of schools being opened. We have seen a lot of girls coming forward to take leading roles in the corporate world. But what we really now need to do is to change this at the villages level. We are really hopeful the way all of us are progressing and the way government is taking initiative, this would really be widespread all across the country. And 15 years from now, especially when we are talking about the gross enrollment ratio to be increased to 50% under the new education policy, and with the help of private education players, with the help of government, we'll be able to achieve this objective. And I can say with confidence that if the girls are educated, everything else would happen. So on this beautiful day, on this wonderful occasion, I welcome each one of you. And I hope after listening to all the wonderful panelists, we would go back with something more, as a value addition and a change in our thought process. Thank you all of you and welcome once again.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, education is the master key to unlock the door to women empowerment at the grassroots level. The only way through which we can move forward is through education among the female citizens. Moving ahead, I would now like to introduce Dr. Urvashi Makkar Mam, Director IMS Ghaziabad. Mam is a seasoned academician, scholar, and institutional leader, having over 23 years of illustrious track record in management education. In recognition of her passion to provide composite and quality education to the young minds, she has recently been elected to the prestigious Council of Management of All India Management Association as representative of corporate institutional members for the year 2021-2023. Continuing her journey in the areas of research and consultancy, Mam has been successfully awarded with the prestigious CMI Level 5 certificate in management and leadership for her participation in the UK India Education Research Initiative Technical Leadership Program in collaboration with AICTE. Ma'am has to her credit 13 books published by renowned publishing houses, including Tata McGraw-Hill, and more than 76 publications in national and international conferences and seminars. I would now like to invite Dr. Urvashi Makkar Ma'am to kindly address the audience.
Thank you very much for this generous introduction, and good morning to all the panelists, all the participants. First of all, I'm really honored to be part of this elite panel discussion, which is having such an impactful theme. And I'm so sure that these deliberations definitely are going to give us new perspectives and new insights for the coming future, and how we can make our contributions to the society in creating some difference, some change, and even if we can become the change agents. And on the onset, I must thank Dr. Amit Gupta, Dr. Satish Sethji also for making me part of this panel. Of course, all of us are together here to celebrate the Women's Day with highly impactful theme that how education can change the women, not only in our country, but I'm sure globally. But prior to that, there is one question which always comes to the mind of the masses, which I have always listened so many of the people talking about, that they really question that why should we even celebrate the International Women's Day? Didn't we have just so many of these already? Isn't it this just an opportunity for feminists to man hate? Such sort of the sentiments definitely can be there. And do we really need an International Women's Day? These are just a few sentiments spread across on such days sometimes. And obviously, Women's Day cannot be a divisive subject when its sole aim is to achieve equality. And that's the theme of today's International Women's Day also. But I think that this backlash is sometimes down to a key misunderstanding of what International Women's Day is and why we really celebrate it. So we really want to create, first of all, understanding that why we are really creating and celebrating such days. And undoubtedly, first of all, some people might think that Women's Day is just for the women and consequently anti-men. I would really like to clear up over here that International Women's Day is for the both fraternities of the society, women and men. The day is about the gender equality. And in order to achieve that, we really have to elevate women, not only in our nation, but globally. And that's a fact. Sometimes another frequent misunderstanding has been witnessed that the day has been thought up by a group of loud millennials who wanted to just shout at men. And that's what has been observed on the social media. Sometimes the youngsters might misinterpret. Again, I would really like to set the record straight that International Women's Day has been celebrated every year since 1911. That's over more than 100 years. But that's something which is about the world's history. When we talk about the Indian culture, undoubtedly, Women's Day has not been going to be into the history as a singular day. In fact, ours is a culture where we are celebrating Ardhanarishwar, where at the time of Srishti, Brahmaji told that Nar and Nari both are having the equal place in the society. And undoubtedly, This Women's Day is a collective day of global celebration, a call for gender parity, and undoubtedly, it's a day for celebration, reflection, advocacy, and definitely some concrete actions. Whatever that looks like globally or at a local level, undoubtedly, this perspective has to be created. And one thing is for sure, that this day is going to continue to grow from strength to strength, because undoubtedly it has given a lot of confidence to the women fraternity all across the globe. Sometimes I have listened such sort of the conversation among us, our colleagues or in our fraternity, that I don't personally feel any discrimination. Once a female friend of mine told me, all of the men around me treat me like an equal, so I don't think I should mark the day. Now, I believe this is one more misinterpretation about the Women's Day, because it's not about the individual. It is about the women everywhere. We might be privileged enough to live in a system where our gender is not seemingly holding us back on a daily basis. But what about the international scenario, or even in our country, in the interiors, tier 2 towns, sometimes? And just think about the women sitting in Nigeria, where men are legally allowed to beat their wives for the purpose of correcting them. Those sitting in Malta, where a man can reportedly be exempt from punishment for kidnapping a woman if he marries her. So undoubtedly, this is not about the individual perspective we are talking about when we celebrate Women's Day. It is about creating a change all across the globe. And I'm very sure together we can keep the conversations going and move ever further in the direction of gender equality, which definitely is highly apt theme of this year's Women's Day. And as per the theme of today's panel discussion, role of education in empowering the women, there is no doubt at all that education is one of the singular empowerment weapon for the women, not only in our country, but globally. And there is no doubt that investing in girls' education transforms not only a family, but the communities, countries, and the entire world. And girls who receive an education are less likely to be giving less productive lives, not only to themselves, but to the families. And they definitely, by simple formula, earn higher incomes, participate in the decisions that most affect them, build better futures for themselves and for their families. So undoubtedly, when we invest in the girls' education, no doubt empowerment is going to be the final outcome. So I must congratulate James for choosing this wonderful theme for today's panel discussion. And I'm sure that these deliberations are going to be continued by the other panelists. And I wish every single woman a great Women's Day with the empowerment in the society, and surely with the men's counterpart contributing to that empowerment. Every society definitely has to proceed further, has to have the strides of success by collaborative vision. And I'm so sure that that collaboration will definitely happen in our country, and the signals are already there. So once again, wish you all the very best on this day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It gives us immense pleasure that you shared your valuable insights into the topic. And yes, we still have a long way to go to bridge the gap for women. And I'm sure we'll be able to do this with every passing day. Moving further, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Kavita Sharma Mam, former principal, Hindu College, University of Delhi. An accomplished academician, Dr. Kavita Sharma Mam has been an active contributor to the cause of higher education throughout her teaching, publications, and the institutions she has been associated with. Ma'am has published a number of books, including Internationalization of Education, 60 Years of University Grants Commission, Hindu College, Delhi, A People's Movement, and the Windmills of the Mind. Ma'am is associated with many professional organizations, including English Association, Indian Association of Canadian Studies, Indian Law Institute, and Indian History Congress. Ma'am has also been conferred the Indira Gandhi Sadbhavna Award by the National Integration and Economic Council. May I now request Ma'am to kindly address our audience.
Well, thank you very much for this very generous introduction. And also, I want to thank the chairman and the organizers for inviting me and congratulate everyone on the International Women's Day. My predecessor touched on the fact that this day started in 1911. That was the first International Women's Day. But for the benefit of the students, I would like to tell them that it began in 1908 when over 15,000 women marched in New York for better work conditions, meaning shorter working hours and better pay and the right to vote. So at this stage, this was celebrated as a first Women's Day and was purely an American celebration. Then in 1910, German Marxist theorist and activist Clara Zetkin was addressing an international conference of working women in Copenhagen. And she suggested that this event be made into an international event. And so in 1911, as my predecessor said, it was celebrated as the first International Women's Day in Austria, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, and of course, USA. Until 1975, that's not so far back, this was a standalone event. But then UN began to mark the day. And then in 1996, the UN began to give a theme for each International Women's Day and therefore for the year. And the first was celebrating the past, planning for the future. This year's theme is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. So it's actually a very broad-based theme. And the campaign theme is break the bias. So two things are important here. One is education, which is the most important thing to break any bias. And the other is self-worth. I find in my interactions with women that a lot of women, even the very highly educated women, have a lack of self-worth. But we must understand that we have come a very long way. There was a time when it was considered, and this is 19th century, the reform movement, when it was considered that if a woman learned to read and write, she would become a widow. So she was kept illiterate. And many scholars say that the women's independence movement was fought. One of the basic strands was also the education, the betterment of women, education of women. And for example, abolition of sati, for example, all the reform movements. And I think Mahatma Gandhi's master stroke was to involve women actively in the independence movement. Because you can't have an independence movement with half the population just sitting at home. So now, in the old days, you had a lot of social evils, female infanticide, where the mother herself was made an accomplice. But let's not forget that even today, we have female feticide, for which a lot of government efforts have gone to eradicate that. And again, the women are accomplices. Now, that's not because they want to kill the fetus, but that's because of the patriarchal norms. And yet, at the same time, it is said that country like India lives in the 7 ages simultaneously. On the other end, the government itself has given a lot of incentives for women's education. The Constitution guarantees the right to education. It also gives the government the right for affirmative action in favor of women. And so many states have education of women free, even up to the postgraduate level. And you have things like Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao, and you have Ladli scheme and so many other schemes. the sustainable development goals, the goal 4, quality education has been promote life learning opportunities. And this includes technical, vocational, and higher education right up to the tertiary level. 4.5 talks of all discrimination, including gender discrimination. And 4.7 recognizes that sustainable development is not possible without overall quality education. Goal 5 actually talks specifically in terms of gender equality. It says achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And yet, you'd be shocked to know that only 49 countries have gender parity, even in primary education. And the gap widens in secondary and tertiary education. I don't have time to go into details, and some of the factors have been mentioned by my predecessor. Not accessibility to school is not there. The washrooms can become a huge problem. Female hygiene issues become a huge problem. Eve teasing, and all those kinds of issues. And so therefore, till all that improves, we will not be able to get gender parity in education, although it has improved. Now, on this day, let us not forget our predecessors. Women like Savitri Bai Phule, who was educated by her husband, Jyotirbai Phule, Fatima Sheikh, with whom she started the first girls' school in 1948. And by 1951, she had 3 similar schools. In 1952, the two of them started the Mahila Seva Mandal to educate women, not only illiteracy, but about rights of women, their dignity. And they were fiercely opposed by both men and women in society. Fatima Sheikh was the first female Muslim teacher of India. You can go on like that. Ramabai Ranade. So she was the first woman social reformer. She was married at the age of 11, but her husband, M.G. Ranade, was an important social reformer and the founder of Prarthana Samaj, and he encouraged her to get educated. Issues were really bad in the sense of Rasa Sundari Devi, who was a woman who lived in a remote village of Bengal, and she tried to educate herself by carving out letters in the blackened soot walls of her kitchen, by stealth at night, because she was not allowed to be educated. She has written her autobiography. There is Begum Rukaya, which is a small book she has written, but I would urge all of you to read it. It's called The Sultana's Dream, where she inverts the thing. The whole society is run by women and men are put in parda. So of course, you can imagine all that, the patriarchal norms that she is challenging there. Pre-independence, you have people like Annie Besant, Durga Bai Deshmukh, Sarojini Naidu. You have people like Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay. So all these people, have led the way for us to come. And for you people, I think some of us have led the way for you to get even greater gender parity. Even in Delhi, it is only in 1904 that Indraprastha School was established with the help of Annie Besant. And a bunch of Delhi theosophists got together and led by Lala Jugal Kishore, whom I had the honor of meeting, started the Indraprastha School. And you'll be amazed to find that there was no woman available to teach there. There weren't women available to head the school. And Annie Besant then called Miss Leonora Jeminer all the way from Australia. And they had to go from door to door begging people, because they said that, the parents said that by putting girls into school, society would be corrupted. There was a lot of debate on what should be the curriculum for girls. And you will be surprised that they had to assure the parents that The curriculum would be moral education, needlework, arithmetic, Ramayana, Puranic tales, hygiene, and home science. All that would make a woman into a good wife and a good mother. Even in my own college, Hindu college, women were, before my time, about 20 years before my time, during the 40s, the women were put behind parda, behind chicks. There were only about 100 women to about over 1,000 boys. They were put behind chicks. They were not allowed to come out. And a faculty member would come and escort them, make them sit in the front row, and then escort them back to enter behind the chicks again. They were not allowed to go to the library. They were not allowed, because then they would mingle with the boys. They were not allowed to take part in any extracurricular activities. So I could tell you a lot of hilarious stories, but we don't have the time for that. Even the 2021 census tells us that the female literacy rate has yet not caught up with the male literacy rate. The male literacy rate is 84.7, whereas the females are 70.3. The lowest I was surprised to find is in Andhra Pradesh, followed by Rajasthan and Bihar. In rural areas, the literacy rate is lower than in the urban areas, and the gap widens in secondary education. But amazingly, it catches up in higher education. That means that girls who cross the barrier of secondary education, then find it easier to enter higher education. The women's enrollment in higher education is higher in courses like BA and BSc, but decreases in the honors courses. And in MBA, it is lower than men, 57.4% men. In BTech, it is abysmally low. There are 71.5% men. In Bachelor of Engineering, it is 71% men, but medical profession, it catches up. There are plenty of women enrolling in medical profession. Overall, in the STEM courses, the women are fewer. And one reason is because there are unspoken and unwritten biases. Dr. Chawla, please tell me when my time is over, because women, I can go on talking forever, So it is out of 280,000 scientists employed, only 39,200 are women and engineers. Many women face at workplace in the STEM professions irrational gender prejudice. And that leads to getting fewer funding opportunities for their research projects. Now the government of India has raised the reservation for women in IITs from 14% to 17%, hoping to cross the 2,000 mark for women engineers. So what I'm trying to say is that gender biases are not just written in laws, they are the part of the mental makeup of society. And therefore, I have to say that biology cannot be made a basis for discrimination. So as the chairman said, you cannot worship women. I don't think women want to be worshipped. They want to be just treated as human beings and equals, because to worship them is to put them on a pedestal and forget about them. Now, more girls during the pandemic dropped out of schools because they had to do more domestic work. And since the resources dwindled in many families, many girls could not go back to school because the preference was given to the boys. Now, we have to see that education is the key for women's empowerment. Let me tell you some UNESCO data. First, of course, a society cannot function if half the population is not just unemployed, but also unemployable. And in today's day and age, when we have to build on a knowledge society, the UNESCO talks about the transformative power of education. If all children, girls and boys, had equal access to education, the per capita income would increase in 40 years by 23%. That's a huge increase. If all women had primary education, just primary education, child marriages and child mortality fall by 1/5, and maternal deaths fall by 2/3. Now, these are huge statistics because they have immediate societal problem, impact. If women know their rights, they have the confidence and they have to develop the confidence to claim them. We must remember that it was only as late as 1955 that monogamy, the Hindu Marriage Act, came into being. It was only in 1956 that women got a right in property of their parental property. And the latest amendment to that only came in 2005 when they got the right to their ancestral property also. So you can see we are making progress. Women are there in every field possible, but today they are in the armed forces, they are astronauts, they are engineers. I mean, I know some women in the ISRO program. They are the quieter women, but they do yeoman's work and they head various departments. So women's education also makes them understand the democratic processes and participate in the polity. It improves their job opportunities, and women's job opportunities also lead to economic growth. Gender has to be an issue in planning also, and it should become a part of every subject. Early marriages become less, complications of pregnancy becomes less. Simple education of women leads to clean water, reduction in disease because they start understanding that. They start to recognize early signs of illness. And let's not forget that women have aspirations, just like men. And those aspirations have to be fulfilled, both for themselves and for societal aim. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't go beyond my time,
No, ma'am.
but thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing the statistics with the audience and making us even more aware of the situation. Indeed, education is a milestone of women empowerment, and only it will enable them to respond to challenges, to confront their traditional role, and change their life. Moving further, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Simrath Kaur Mam, Principal Sri Ram College of Commerce, University of Delhi. Prior to this, Mam was the Dean of Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University. Mam has undertaken several research projects and acted as an advisor to institutes and organizations such as the Ministry of Finance, Government of India, the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, Government of India, the National Council of Applied Economic Research, to name a few. Her areas of interest include competition and productivity, climate change and organizational policy, and poverty and food security. In addition, she has published and presented several papers at national and international conferences. Professor Kaur's book Privatization and Public Regulation, The Indian Experience, published by Macmillan, received the Best Book Award. Honored by the Business School Affairs, Dr. Kaur is a recipient of the Best Professor in Public Policy Award. May I now request ma'am to kindly address our audience. Ma'am, you are on mute, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this very kind introduction. And I must say, I am actually elated to have heard the previous speakers. It was a true delight to listen to Dr. Urvashi Makkar, followed by a very intensive data-based analysis of Dr. Kavita Sharma. Thank you, James, for this kind invite, and my heartiest compliments to all the women and men for celebrating this day. I would like to begin my content from a couplet which is from Maithili Sharan Gupta. It was reproduced in the Economic Survey. An Economic Survey, which is a Ministry of Finance publication, for the first time took out a pink issue only to commemorate the women. So we have a pink Economic Survey. And what does Maithili Sharan, that this is one view of women empowerment, which says, Abla Jeevan, hai yahi teri kahani, aanchal mein hai doodh aur aankhon mein pani. Meaning thereby, women, this is your life story, mothering your role, sadness your destiny. This is one viewpoint But we parallelly also have another viewpoint of Subramania Bharti, who states, her head held high and looking everyone in the eye, unafraid of anyone because of innate integrity, possessing assuredness born of courage and conviction, the modern woman never feels inferior to anyone. So these are two diametrically different views of women. And it is important for us to understand at this point of time that India is also in a transition stage wherein from empowerment of women, we are trying to move towards a section which states how are we going to have a women-led development strategy. At this point of time, I would also try to put in some of the concepts related to education. From an economic perspective, there are market failures, and when a market fails, it is time for the governments to intervene. And typically, markets fail when there are externalities. They could be positive or negative, or the production could be of a public good, or it could be a merit good, or you have more equal distribution of income and wealth. Now, education is a classic case of a merit good because, along with education and health, the kind of money that is invested by the individual is actually suboptimal vis-a-vis what the nation would want. So, typically meaning that this is a sector where the state has a very important role to play. But undoubtedly, with the private institutions coming up now and the private schooling coming up, simply shows that the role has to go even beyond the public sector and there has to be private participation totally or even through public-private partnerships in it. Now, what is the economic significance of education? In a typical production function approach, we have output which is a function of inputs. And students who are hearing would know it is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. But in again the textbook forms, we assume labor to be homogeneous labor, but in reality it is not. And one of the most contributing factors to productivity enhancement is your education, training, skill development of the human capital. Women constitute almost 50% of the population globally. And therefore, if we are not empowering them through education, simply means we are losing out on the potential productivity gains which can come about because of more trained and more aware and more educated women along with the male workforce. And we have data which does state that if the women gap in economic participation would not have been there. In other words, if the women participation is equal to the male participation, the GDP levels are expected to be higher in the range of 20 to 30% vis-a-vis what they are today. So no one can negate the role of education, and we have several quotes by many known people who talk about the importance of education. And I would just like to mention here as one of the quotes which says, most important weapon which can be used to change the world, that is education, and this is a quote by Nelson Mandela. Now, how do we go about it and what is the further importance of productivity enhancement which we attain through education? Of course, there is a direct impact on poverty. There would be associated impacts on the poverty nutrition tracks. Very well, Dr. Kavita mentioned that your nutritional levels, your hygiene levels are going to be better when you're educated. So your poverty nutrition traps are also going to be better addressed, and it would help households come out of the poverty traps when the women are also equally educated about several aspects. And one thing, when we are talking about education, it is not just the literacy part. We are also talking about the more comprehensive version of it, which says they have to be financially literate, how to do the banking, they have to be digitally literate, how to use the ICT technology. So several aspects of education is what we are encompassing, and not necessarily the narrow definition of what a book knowledge is going to be giving you. Also, additionally important is what are the steps that are being taken by the government? Several. And we are in the right path. To some extent, we are bridging the gaps. But nonetheless, there is a miles and miles of roads that need to be trodden before our conscience can rest in peace. We are unfortunately not doing well, despite a change which is in the favorable direction. Our levels are not good. Simply quoting a particular data, if we look at the global gender gap index, we are about 140th out of the 160-70 countries. So we are somewhere on the lower rung. And this is true both for the overall global gender index as well as the various subcomponents of the index, which are primarily built on 4 pillars. You look up the economic participation, it is poor. You look up the kind of equal wages that a woman gets vis-a-vis the males, that again is much lower. And in general, a woman is getting only about 1/5 of the earnings what a male counterpart is going to get. So these are statistics which are not good. But only talking about the sorry state of the affairs is not what nation building is all about. We must look into the progress that has been made. But if there are countries which are the Norwegian countries, Denmark, Sweden, they are the highest in terms of the gender equality. So we must work and intensify the efforts that we are putting forward. And at this point in time, I would also like to talk about 2 very important concepts of Amartya Sen, Professor Amartya Sen, the missing women and the unwanted women. Why do women go missing? That's primarily because there is a female feticide. Even before the girl child is born, she's killed. And second, even after the birth, the girl is it's aborted either in the fetus or allowed to die once the delivery has been made. If this had not happened, we would have substantially more women. So there is a concept of a missing women. And simultaneously is also the concept of the unwanted girls. And economic survey calls this a meta-son preference. So even if you're not aborting the girl, you continue to have children until you have a male child. And the data has shown that the probability of having the next child is dramatically lower if your last child born is a son, and the probability of the next child still being born is statistically much higher if the last born child is a girl. So you keep on having more children until such time you end up with a son. So the girls who have been born are the unwanted girls. You may love them, but typically they were unplanned and you never wanted them. So missing women and unwanted girls, why is there such a horrible legacy to the Indian situation? Though we are improving, I'm not denying that. Most importantly comes the situation of patri locality. After a marriage, girl will change her locality. She will move into her husband's house. The second is patrilineality. Often, the ownership of the assets passes off to the son. Though, yes, Dr. Kavita mentioned the acts where now girls are also equal participants, but often it is not happening. And this is also corroborated further that in a state like India, in a country like India, there is so much of informal sector. There are no insurance. So your son becomes your old age insurance. And therefore the parents want a son because in the old age, it's the son who's going to take care of the parents. At least that's the thought process. Ultimately, who's going to do what may be totally different. And also this is supported by the fact that several of the religious customs, only the sons can perform the last rites. Situations have changed. We now see women also performing the last rites of their dear ones. They are also the ones who are going along with their near and dear ones to immerse the ashes. So nonetheless, historically, we've not had a very strong legacy. And therefore, while we are changing ourselves, the interceptional or the transformational change has yet to happen. We are taking small steps. The mindsets are yet to be worked upon dramatically. And this is where education is going to play a very, very important role. Schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, very wonderful schemes. Schemes such as setting up of Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, again commendable because we are promoting the women over there. And there is also a national policy of education which says education should be for all. But yes, the numbers are not conducive. And the numbers do tell us how the participation of the women in education gradually narrows down from the primary to secondary to tertiary. And we have some data sets where from 19 52 the date today, dramatic improvements have taken place, but the gaps continue to remain. With this, I would like to close on my observations and just make a recommendation. Most important is the mindset. We all have to change that. And education is a very important tool. And we must nourish, nurture, and promote education which is conducive for a growth which is not just inclusive growth but also sustainable growth. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insightful words. Everything stands true to the core. Women education in India has been a need of the hour, and education is the foundation stone for the empowerment and can bring reduction in inequalities and develops concept of participation. Hopefully, we will be able to achieve this even more someday. Before I invite Dr. Satish Seth, sir, to deliver a vote of thanks, I would like to introduce sir to you all. Sir is currently advisor to chairman and former director general of JIMS Kalkaji, New Delhi. He is a postgraduate mechanical engineer with fellowship of IMA, Institution of Engineers and the Institute of Marine Engineers. He is an MBA from FMS Delhi University. His doctorate is in the field of organizational behavior. An accredited corporate trainer, he conducts workshops at the PhDCCI and FICCI in areas of personality development, team building, creativity and innovation, design thinking, etc. As a consulting engineer, he has been a technical advisor to Rolls-Royce India Limited and has undertaken several project assignments for ACB, France, Danfoss, UK, L&T, etc. Now, may I please request sir to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Right. Thank you, Sania. Kind words, those. First and foremost, I would like to thank our distinguished guests for the inaugural session, Dr. Simrath Kaur, Dr. Kavita Sharma, Dr. Urvashi Makkar. Thank you, ladies, women, for being here today to grace the occasion and participate in our national seminar on women empowerment and role of education. Personally, I could not have wished for a more august gathering of women to celebrate this all-important occasion of International Women's Day. All my distinguished guests are eminent professionals, consummate academicians. All are well recognized. They are much feted and richly awarded for the excellence that they have achieved in their professional career and lives. Thank you for being here today. You have given us a very rich knowledge, very diverse perspectives on the topic today of women empowerment and role of education. Going back to the genesis of the women movement with regard to empowerment, starting from 1908 to how it progressed to International Women's Day in 1911. That was remarkable. The wealth of knowledge and it was replete with examples, a lot of illustrations there. So very, very interesting. The entire gamut of issues was discussed by these eminent personalities today. In fact, there's so many women who have led this movement in the past, which we have got to know about, whether it's Annie Besant, or Sarojini Naidu. They've covered, gender equality, about literacy rate, about the social evils of, child marriage, child female infanticide, etc. So I think, summing it up, it's been a very, very, interesting session, a very, very interesting inaugural session, where we have, I'm sure we're going to walk, and with all the coming speakers, in the subsequent panel discussion, we'll all be walking out of here far richer in knowledge and, perspectives than when we first walked in. I'm happy that we selected this topic. It was International Women's Day, and we're very, very pertinent, linking it to the role of education, in promoting and encouraging women empowerment. It was a topical theme. Women empowerment is the pivotal part in any society, state, or country. It is a woman who plays a dominant role in the basic life of a child and they're an important section of our society. Education as a means of empowerment for women can bring about a positive attitudinal change, which is very, very important. The Constitution of India empowers the state to adopt affirmative measures for prompting ways and means to empower women. Education significantly makes a difference in the lives of women. And women empowerment is not simply a national issue, but a global issue. The concept of women empowerment was introduced at the International Women's Conference first in Nairobi in 1985. Education is a milestone of women's empowerment because it enables them to respond to the challenges, to confront their traditional role, and change their lives. Hence, we cannot neglect the importance of education with reference to women empowerment. As per the United Nations Development Fund for Women, well, that refers to empowerment as a psychological sense of personal control or influence, a concern with actual social influence, political power, and legal rights. It is a multi-level construct referring to individuals, organizations, and community. So in conclusion, I would like to state that the essence of today's seminar, the theme has been education as a means of empowering women through positive attitudinal change. And as we've heard today, Professor Simrath also talked about, and we've heard all this, and we've been talking about all the, the disparity that has, been there with regard to men as far as women are concerned. And what we need to do is take very, very proactive action. We need to be energized opinion. We need to energize the movement further, and the government has to respond in similar fashion and take far more steps, than what they have already taken, the various schemes and the projects that are there to encourage and enhance, the concept of women empowerment. So in conclusion, once again, I would like to thank very profusely our distinguished guests for the inaugural session. Thank you for being here today. My pleasure to welcome you on board. I would also like to thank our chairman, Dr. Amit Gupta, for his continual guidance, his continual encouragement, without which none of these important events which we hold throughout the year would be seeing the light of day. Also, I would like to very firmly acknowledge, the contribution of the GYMS team, which is ably led by Director Dr. Kavita Sharma, who have very, very meticulously organized and planned this event today. And we all wish it the very best and success. So thank you very much. Welcome on board once again, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Satish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
ma'am.
Dr. Sania.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Sani.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. And here we come to an end of the inaugural session. And I thank all the guests of the inaugural session for their encouraging words. Moving further, I now take immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the next session of the National Seminar. And I would now like to introduce all the speakers to the audience. Therefore, I take this opportunity and extend my warm welcome to Dr. Preetam Khandelwal, ma'am.
Hanji.
Former professor, Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi. Dr. Preetam Khandelwal, ma'am, has over 4 decades of experience in teaching, research, training, and consulting. Ma'am retired as Professor Organizational Behavior from the Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi in 2019. Ma'am's research interest and contributions are in the area of work motivation, leadership, human resource development, positive psychology, work-life balance, intuition in decision-making, gender in management, and entrepreneurship. Ma'am has presented several papers and chaired sessions in national and international conferences and has numerous publications in indexed peer-reviewed national and international journals and chapters in books. She is the co-author of two popular textbooks on organizational behavior, namely ORGB and Organizational Behavior with Nelson D.L. and J.C. Quick by Cengage Learning India. She is the recipient of the Best Women Trainer Award from the Indian Society for Training and Development and is a professional member of the Indian Society of Applied Behavioral Science, life member of the Indian Society of Applied Psychology, the Indian Society of Training and Development, Indian Academy of Management, and an accredited entrepreneurship motivation trainer. It gives us pleasure in welcoming you, ma'am, as the panel chairperson for this session. Now I take the opportunity to introduce our first distinguished panel speaker to the audience, Dr. Shauli Mukherjee, Director, School of Education, Adamas University, Kolkata. With a purposeful career in the education space spanning over more than 20 years, Dr. Mukherjee had been the founder principal of Adamas World School and STEM World School, the first STEM school in West Bengal. Under her inspiring leadership, STEM World School has been ranked and awarded as the second best international day school in West Bengal by Education World. Ma'am has been the recipient of numerous awards and accolades, including National Quality Excellence Award, Gem of India Award, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan Award, National Education Leadership Award in the category of Commitment to Excellence in Education, to name a few. She has also been awarded for being India's top 50 women leaders in the education industry and top 20 revolutionary education leaders by the Academic Council of Unwanted. She is also recognized among 99 women achievers of India for the year 2021. She is currently working as the Director of School of Education at Adamas University, Kolkata. It is indeed a great pleasure to have you here, ma'am. Now I take the opportunity to introduce our second distinguished panel speaker to the audience, Dr. Namitha Rajput, former principal, Sri Aurobindo College. Dr. Namitha Rajput has served as the principal at Sri Aurobindo College, University of Delhi for a term of 3 years and has an enriching experience as Associate Professor, Department of Commerce, Sri Aurobindo College since 1995. Ma'am is a certified lead auditor for quality standards. Besides her rich teaching experience for almost 24 years, she has contributed tremendously in the area of research, primarily focused on areas concerning finance, human resource management, CSR, sustainability, and higher education. Over 200 conference proceedings and publications in a plethora of listed journals are credited to her name, out of which over 70 are published in Scopus, ABDC, and journals listed in UGC Care. Furthermore, she has published over 20 books and is also credited with the copyright of 3, registered with the Government of India. She has been awarded by Ministry of Culture and facilitated by Education Minister for her contribution in higher education. It is our pleasure to welcome you, ma'am. Let me now take an opportunity to introduce our third distinguished panel speaker to you all, Dr. Kanika Ahuja, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Psychology, Lady Shri Ram College for Women, University of Delhi. Ma'am also holds administrative post of Media Advisor and Convener Placement Cell. A gold medalist from Lady Shri Ram College and doctorate in psychology from University of Delhi with JRF, she has about 22 years of teaching, research, and professional experience. Her current areas of interest are psychometry, social psychology, and organizational behavior. She is the editor of The Learning Curve, a peer-reviewed journal published by Lady Shri Ram College since 2018. She has published more than 30 articles in leading journals, has authored a book, co-edited a book, and has also written 2 course texts for BA Psychology and 1 for MA Psychology. She conducts soft skill training and psychometric projects for corporates, as also workshops for parents, teachers, and students in leading schools in the country. Besides her academic pursuits, she has written columns for leading newspapers like Hindustan Times and Times of India and appeared on talk shows. On behalf of Jim's Kalkaji, I welcome you, ma'am, for this session. Moving ahead, let me introduce to you all to our fourth distinguished panel speaker, Ms. Shalini Diwan, founder and president, Global Fighters, Director, Nano Biopharma Private Limited. Ms. Shalini Diwan, a product of Gargi College, University of Delhi, is a fashion and wellness enthusiast, has always dreamed to see a society structured in such a way that smile and happiness rules every heart. She is the founder and president of Global Fighters Foundation and owns startups like Lucido, Golden Cocoon, etc. She has been awarded with 100 Women Entrepreneurs Award for last 2 consecutive years, Haryana Garima Award for her contribution in welfare and development programs in Haryana, National Motivational Award, Womenator Influence Award, and much more. It is pleasure to have you here, ma'am. Moving further, let me take this privilege to introduce our 5th distinguished panel speaker, Professor Reena Marwaha, Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. Ma'am is a professor and she is the recipient of several awards and fellowships, including the Asia Fellowship of the Asian Scholarship Foundation. She has been a short-term consultant of the World Bank and UN Women. She was an ICSSR Senior Fellow, MHRD, Government of India 2017 to 2019, during which her study was on reimagining India-Thailand relations. She has also been on deputation as Senior Academic Consultant, ICSSR, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India for 3 years from 2012 to 2015 and continued on behalf of ICSSR to coordinate and lead the India-Europe research platform till July 2017. She is the founding editor of Millennial Asia, a tri-annual journal on Asian studies of the Association of Asia Scholars published by Sage Publishers. In addition to several chapters and articles we published in books and journals, she has published 16 books as well. We welcome you, ma'am, to this national seminar. May I now request our speakers for the session to proceed with the discussion, and for the same you would be getting 1.5 hours of discussion time along with 15 minutes of reminder at 1 hour 15 minutes. Also, I would like to mention here that Dr. Namitha Rajput will be joining a little late today. Thank you.
Can I take over?
Dr. Pritam, if
Yes,
I may
ma'am.
interrupt for half a minute. First of all, a very good morning to you. Welcome on board.
Good morning.
Yeah, and I also spot Shalini is there. Shalini, very good morning, and Dr.
Good
Shawnee,
morning.
good morning
And it's
to
a
you as
pleasure
well.
here. Yes. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, Kanika, good morning.
Very good
how are
morning.
you?
Very good morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Pritam, 2 in fact ladies, women will be a little late. Namitha Rajput and Reena Marwa, they are attending, one a workshop, one an award ceremony. So women are in demand today, and they'll be joining a little later. So you may please continue. Thank you for being here again today.
Sure. So thank you, Dr. Seth, for inviting me to chair this session. And it would have been nice, though, to see at least one male panelist on this occasion. But let me begin by wishing each one of you a happy Women's Day. Women's empowerment has been a subject of enormous discussions and contemplation over the last few decades worldwide. However, there are differences in the understanding of the term empowerment, and various definitions of empowerment do exist. And the contested nature of this concept makes it very challenging to both define and to measure empowerment. A very popular definition by Clayson and Miller defines women's empowerment as a process whereby the lives of women and girls are transformed from a situation where they have limited power to one where their power is enhanced. So this framework looks at the concept of women's empowerment from a more holistic basis. And it recognizes 3 levels at which change can take place: the personal level, the relational level, and the environment level. So changes at the personal level takes place within the person. This refers to changes in how a woman sees herself, how she considers her role in society and that of other women, and how she sees her economic role and her confidence in deciding and taking action that concerns herself and other women. Changes at the relational level takes place in the relationships and power relation within the women's surrounding network. And this includes changes both within the family, the household, within the community, and encompasses markets, local authorities, and decision makers. Finally, the changes at the environmental level takes place in a very broader context. And these can be informal changes or as social norms and attitudes and beliefs of the wider society, or they can be formal changes in the political or legislative framework. So all these three levels are actually interrelated. For example, improvements in self-esteem and confidence, which is personal change, can influence the way that a woman takes decision within the household or the community, which is a relational change. And if a large number of women are gaining more confidence and establishing better power relations within their immediate surroundings, then this will generate changes in the broader environment as well. So basically, it can be the other way around also. For example, the changes in the social norms and in the broader society, that is the environmental changes, legislative changes, can also lead to changes in the personal level or relational level. To take an example, the political participation of women, in the Panchayati Raj system at the grassroots level. This has provided them freedom, progress, confidence, and participation and exposure to the outer world. Now, education is an empowering tool for the marginalized, and especially for women. And the famous Ghanaian proverb attributed to the famous Ghanaian scholar and educationist James Emmanuel Quagir Agre, who said, if you educate a woman, you educate an individual. If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a family. And we can also extend it to educating a nation as a whole. So this maxim advocates creating new opportunities for women by expanding their social space, but within the ideology, of course, of traditional gender roles, as he had said. However, the same profound saying by this Ghanaian scholar was quoted by UNESCO on its 50th anniversary to promote female education. Now, when we look at some of the some of the challenges in the Indian context, women's education exists where combination of oppression, empowerment, equality, inequality, and patriarchal, all these exist together. And addressing gender disparity in education actually goes beyond increasing the presence of females in institutions. What matters is the range and rigors of experience and space a society provides to them. So they develop confidence, skills to participate in the governance of the society. And this is the toughest challenge in India, I feel. So women's empowerment and educational development promoted alongside the structures which encourage women's constant patriarchal subordination. Hence, it is common that the highly educated and economically independent women continue to occupy marginalized positions in the power structure of educational institutions. Just to take an example, the prestigious Delhi University, and many of us are part of that university, which is celebrating its centenary celebrations this year, has not had a woman VC for 100 years. Clearly, the question is, if education improves women's decision-making authority and empowerment, then how education can empower them unless they share equal space with men where most of the decisions are made. Such gendered spaces in the educational sphere are enough to maintain the gender hierarchies and production of social structures. It's obvious that the progress of our country, or rather the rate of progress, is dependent on education, literacy, and inclusion of women into the mainstream activities. However, traditional societal cultural norms through a diversity of religion, region, caste, etc., pose a challenge in this contemporary thought and what impetus that may be required to remove them from the societal shackles that they have been subjected to for centuries. In 1990, as we all know, Amartya Sen brought to the world's attention the social and political problem of missing girls in India. And the child sex ratio or the missing girls problem has continued to remain a pressing concern. The government's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao mission is a very good initiative in this context, but addressing gender disparity in education goes beyond increasing the presence of girls in schools. It involves removal of deep mental blocks and binds them to limited traditional roles. So there has been a phenomenal growth in the number of women enrolled in higher education since independence. Today, the Indian women are all poised to take part in the rapidly expanding economy. What is required is that the social, cultural barriers to female participation in the economy be removed, and the government reorients its growth strategy in favor of women. And education in the current form alone might not be sufficient to spur this growth, and particularly in favor of labor female participation rates in India. So with these opening remarks, I would like to invite the esteemed panelists one by one to take the discussion forward. And first, I'd like to invite Dr. Shawli Mukherjee to express her views on the topic. And I request the participants, the audience, to kindly give their questions or put their questions on the chat box. And we'll take up some of these questions after the speaker finishes thoughts. So first we have Dr. Shawli Mukherjee. Can I invite you please to share your views on this topic?
Thank you so much. I would just like to confirm first whether I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Please
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the invite. And right at the very outset, I would like to wish a very, very happy International Women's Day to all the wonderful and the beautiful women out there. The topic for today's seminar is so very pertinent, the role of education in women empowerment. So now there are two things we have to understand. The two very important terms are empowerment and education. So we know that when we speak about India, majority part of the rural population, this is the usual scenario that we normally see, that when the girls hit their puberty, they're either made to drop out of the school because they're considered fit for household chores, or they're considered fit to be married off. And even when there are a boy and a girl in the family, and the family is faced with a choice of whether to continue the education of the boy or the girl, the parents' obvious choice is always the boy. Now, this is definitely what we normally see and usually see in the rural parts of India. So does that mean that the situation is absolutely rosy when it comes to the modernized society or the urban society where we are a part of? When we speak about education, I think it's very important that we actually try to understand what education is all about. Is it about formal education that we get in the schools, colleges, and universities, after which we actually are handed over a degree or a certificate stating that we are educated? So is this what education is all about? We have to understand that education is something which starts right from our family. So the family being the first agent of socialization and the first institute which actually provides education to the younger ones, what exactly happens in the so-called educated families? Well, when a child is born, the mother usually segregates a boy and a girl by using the color codes pink and blue. So that is the first, gender stratification that happens in the family. And who's doing that? A mother, a so-called educated woman. When the child is a little young and the child maybe is having his or her birthday, so the parents decide that if it is a girl, then definitely the girl would love to play with the doll. And if it's a boy, the boy would love to play with a toy gun or a toy car. So this is being done in the family. Next, the parents, the grandparents, they usually read a lot of fairy tales to the children when they're very, very young. Remember, when their minds are at a very, very impressionable, their minds are completely impressionable, that's the time when a lot of fairy tales are being read out by the mothers, the grandparents, and even the parents. Now, if we look at the general trend of those fairy tales which are being read out to our children, it's basically that we find a female protagonist who is extremely beautiful, good, and at the same time, completely helpless, waiting for a handsome prince or a handsome knight to come and save her. So this female protagonist happens to be somebody who is slim, fair, and beautiful. Secondly, there is also an antagonist, a female antagonist, who is construed as a villainous character. Now, she has a lot of intelligence. She is a person who is extremely ambitious and always, scheming things up and doing things like that. So if this is the general trend of our fairy tales that we actually read out to our daughters when they're very young, we have to be mindful about what are the signals that we are actually passing on to them. Are we trying to tell our daughters that, well, if you have to be construed as somebody who is beautiful, you have to be slim and fair? Secondly, if you have a lot of intelligence and if you're ambitious, well, our culture and society may construe you as somebody who is a villainous character. So are these the kind of messages which we should actually pass on to our daughters and our future generation in the name of education? Now, this is also education. Education is not something only which we actually read out from the textbooks, we cram contents, and we do stuff like that and we pass exams. That is not only education. We have to remember that from the point of view of an educator, I have to say this, that these fairy tales are normally read out to the children when they're 6 or 7 years old. Until 6 and 7 years old, a child's mind is extremely impressionable. So whatever you tell her or him, that gets permanently imprinted. Even those, cliched fairy tales, they often end with a fruitful and a happy marriage. So again, are we trying to tell our future generation, especially our daughters, that the end of everything lies in a happy and prosperous marriage? Nowhere in those fairy tales do we see that the female protagonist actually rules the kingdom in a very, very wise and sound manner, that she has become an able administrator. Never. So we always see that the particular tale ends with her marriage, which is the ultimate culmination. So we have to be very, very mindful about the signals and the messages that we are actually transmitting to our daughters and the future generation of our children. This obviously has a lot of repercussions because it doesn't end here in the family. So it also, we see the same thing happening even in the schools, where if a girl falters with solving a mathematical problem, often there is a kind of an insinuation from the teacher that, well, the girl is not fit, or the girls are not fit for STEM careers. And this has so much of an effect that today we find so many so less number of women in the leadership roles. So what starts maybe as something which is considered to be quite small in its impact in the family has a wider repercussion in the society as well. So we do all this in the name of education. So I think it's time that we have to redefine and reimagine what education is all about. Education is actually the concepts and the meanings that we transmit to our future generation through each and every behavior, through each and every activity that we actually do. Now, let me come to the next term, that is empowerment. So when can we actually say that a woman is truly empowered? A woman is empowered when she doesn't feel embarrassed or ashamed of the fact that she's the most important person in her life. So she's empowered when she can love herself completely, wholly, and first. Why do I say this? Because our society actually trains us women, right since childhood, to become good wives, good sisters, and good mothers. We are not trained to treat ourselves as completely celebratory, as completely sovereign, and as completely worthy. So true empowerment would definitely encapsulate a paradigm shift where there is firstly a shift in our thinking process, where we would not be ashamed and embarrassed to place ourselves in the front of the line, at the top of the ladder, or grabbing the best seat at the table. That is what is true empowerment. True empowerment also is when we do not have to strive endlessly to attain the impossible standards that the society and culture have actually set for us. When we would be completely, comfortable in our own skin, when we would be fully and entirely able to accept ourselves and love ourselves the way we are, and when we can celebrate and rejoice in our imperfections, in our rawness, in our vulnerability, and in our ordinariness. True education and true empowerment would actually make a woman fierce and fearless, and will be able to make her acknowledge and embrace her flaws and her imperfections, and will enable her to wear them proudly as her badge. A truly empowered woman would be able to recognize all the opportunities that come her way and to make the best use of that. We have to understand and we have to remember that the best of the opportunities would never come to us fully packaged in a nice manner. So the best of the opportunities are often messy. They're often confusing. They challenge us. They're risky. So we have to be completely comfortable in order to take on things which we have never done before. Also, we have to understand that growth and comfort never ever coexist. So a truly empowered woman would be hungry and greedy for her ambitions. And there is absolutely nothing wrong in wanting more for yourself, as long as you're not hurting or harming others. So we are actually not meant to live on somebody else's benchmark or to let anyone dictate who you want to be or who you should be. So truly empowered and an educated woman would actually continue to chase her dreams, their passion, and their ambition relentlessly till the time they are able to grow and evolve into their very best, their highest, their truest, and their most authentic version of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shauli Mukherjee. Thank you so much for emphasizing the role of parenting in perpetuating gender stereotypes and also talking about the importance of empowerment more at a personal level that women need to strive to achieve. And yes, there are mental blocks which function in a very subtle manner and surface in every small and major decisions that they take in the process of learning, even though the girls are reaching the school and they are surviving. But these mental blocks are what we really need to work on. So any questions at this point? I do see that there are no questions on the chat box. So maybe Dr. Mukherjee, we can take the questions a little later, maybe after some time. So the next speaker I would like to invite is Dr. I'd like to invite Dr. Kanika Ahuja. If you could
Thank you very much.
share your views. Yeah. Thank you.
Firstly, a big thank you to Dr. Seth, Dr. Sharma for inviting me here today. It's my honor to be on the panel, which is being moderated by Dr. Khandelwal. It's a delight to be sharing the panel with my co-panelist here. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity today. My panelists before me have spoken and they've shared some data. I heard Professor Kavita saying, Dr. Preetam Khandelwal spoke about how when you educate a woman, you educate an entire family. When you educate a man, you educate an individual. And truly you educate the entire Mother India when you educate an Indian woman. I just want to present share my screen. Let me know if the screen is visible.
Yeah, it's visible. Please go ahead. It's visible.
All right. So I wanted to show some male-female literacy rates in India and sort of compare the two. From, I think, much before independence, as you can see, I have data from 1901, there were, of course, differences in the male-female literacy rates. And as you can see, even in 2021, the literacy rates are indeed, there is a gender gap there. So that while 82.14% males are literate, only 65.46% women are literate. However, what is heartening is that this gender gap in literacy rates seem to be decreasing over the years. And I'll just come back to this statistic because this doesn't tell us the entire story. It doesn't tell us, for instance, things like financial literacy, holding of property and other things on which there are huge gender gaps, not just in India, but also worldwide. But firstly, why are we talking about empowerment of women and how can education empower women? The first thing to be considered here is that education decreases women poverty. And there are a whole lot of statistics available on that. Poverty is sexist. While women make up 40% of the agricultural labor force, only 3 to 20% are landholders. As we see old data and we see data whether in the times of SARS or other kind of pandemics, all pandemics have exaggerated structural inequalities. There have been increased cases of domestic violence. There have been increased cases of women having to take a step back in their careers to look after their children because daycares are not working, because the schools were shut, and therefore somebody needed to be home as a primary caregiver. And world over, that mantle has fallen upon women. So education, or despite the education, it's women who had to take a step back when it comes to taking care of their family, taking care of their children. Statistics have again shown us that just 1 year of secondary school education can increase a woman's lifetime earning by up to 20%. So that tells us the power of education in decreasing poverty. The second is something that Professor Kavita Singh also spoke about, how education leads to fewer unintended pregnancies and delayed marriage. Even today, worldwide, 1 in every 5 women is married before the age of 18. Laws be damned. Uneducated women, however, are 3 times more likely to marry before the age of 18 as compared to those who attend secondary school. So education empowers women to decide when to become pregnant, when to become married. And this inevitably will lead to an increase in their socio-economic status. It definitely gives them a better voice. Education does improve women's health. When women and girls are educated, they can make smarter decisions about their own health. And an important part of their health is sexual health, which leads to lower rates of sexual diseases, contraction, and so on. Of course, it also leads to women eating better, being more conversant with their own health issues, and so on and so forth. Education also increases women's political participation. And no surprise there, in countries which are higher on the gender equity, the women's political participation rates are also higher. You know, the entire Scandinavian belt, you will see that as there is a lower gender gap on literacy, there is also a direct relationship on women's political participation. When women participate in politics, it means that policies and politicians are not just focused on the needs and wants of men, but female opinions are just as important. Dr. Preetam Khandelwal just reminded us that in 100 years of Delhi University, there has not been a single woman vice chancellor. It's, of course, not a very pleasant state of affairs. And what that does is that when women do not participate in decision-making bodies, it keeps their voices out. And there are, as a result of diversity, as a result of lack of diversity and lack of women representation, women issues are not deemed to be as important as other issues. Fifth, education gives women more and better employment opportunities. We just heard the previous speaker talk about how women are underrepresented in STEM areas. The entire belt of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Now, this, of course, is world over and not just India. Personally, we've done some research on gender gap in mathematics. And interestingly, while there is a kind of a biological explanation that some people do propose, there is also a psychological and sociological explanation of why women are underrepresented. And one of the reasons, interestingly, seems to be loss of femininity. Yes, you heard that right. So especially in the West, where there is a dating culture, it is assumed that women who are brighter at mathematics, men look at them as somebody who's not just a geek, but as somebody who's more masculine. Apparently, being good at mathematics is not feminine enough and does not get you the dates that you require, does not get you the date on a prom night that you may want. So, and also the whole role of education and how mathematics education is structured. Even today, when you look at mathematics textbooks, you see questions that talk about the trajectory of a bullet, for instance, that talks about the speed and distance and velocity of a rocket or a car. Where are the sums that talk about, for instance, women's participation? So there could be questions that talk about washing of clothes. Of course, that will perpetuate another kind of gender stereotype. But things like dolls or things like whatever women are interested in, the questions are structured in a manner that appeal only to boys, making mathematics a masculine discipline. So we as educationists need to think about how to make mathematics a less masculine domain so that women take pride and women get interested in questions of mathematics and also see the utility of mathematics. This is going to make them not just interested in mathematics, but also interested in mathematics as a discipline that is going to then generate employment opportunities. It's also interesting to note that the salaries are far higher in STEM disciplines as compared to, for instance, liberal arts, which seem to be something that women are naturally suited for. So a woman receptionist, teacher, nurse, working in liberal arts and artist and so on are underpaid as compared to scientists, for instance, right? So women need to come to professions which are in the field of STEM. It will also decrease societal gender stereotypes, which promotes the acceptance of women in higher earning and decision-making positions. Now, I spoke about the female literacy rates, which are pretty high, or at least they are getting better. But when you look at the female labor force participation in India, it tells us another horror story. In March 2021, the female labor force participation dropped to an all-time low of 21.2%, which was a little marginally lower from 21.9% 1 year back in 2020. But back in 2018, it was 26%. And in 2005, it was 36.7%. So clearly, it's not just about a glass ceiling, but also an invisible door which is keeping women out of participating in the labor force. And it's shocking that even when one compares India to countries like Indonesia and China, the participation of women in the labor force is increasing in these countries, whereas it is decreasing in our country. So where are we going wrong? Female participation in the economy shows a very, very sharp U curve. It seems that it is the poorest and the richest women who work the most. And women in the middle sort of socio-economic segment do not work as much compared to the women who are in the richest sector and women who are in the poorest informal kind of a sector, mainly the agriculture and mainly the domestic workers. So what is happening which is preventing women from getting the right jobs, from getting an entry? And of course, the glass ceiling is another story. I just thought I'll briefly talk about gender differences in self-presentation in job search, because this is something which is going to be relevant for women and especially girl students. I heard Dr. Say talk about how there are how gyms has a very large number of, so about 50% of students are women at gyms, which is a very, very heartening thing. And about 7,000 women are studying at gyms. So when women get out of gyms, and when they complete their MBA, they will, of course, look for jobs. And you will find that, and these are studies by LinkedIn, for instance, which show that recruiters are 13% more likely to click on men's profile when it shows up in search. So where are the recruiters going wrong, or where are the women applicants going wrong in presenting themselves, in putting themselves out there? Why are they not being called for an interview? How are we wronging ourselves in presenting ourselves? Gender stereotypes seem to play a role in framing of resumes. In India, and these are again studies that have been done by LinkedIn, men are more likely to focus on technical skills, while women are more likely to focus on soft skills, personal attributes, and education on LinkedIn profiles. And LinkedIn, of course, is one of the biggest search engines today, and a lot of recruiters do use LinkedIn. So we did a little research and we tried to compare women profiles on LinkedIn with men profiles on LinkedIn. And we used a large sample of about 600 men and women profiles who were otherwise matched on, for instance, they were controlled on, they were all from top 10 MBA institutes in the country. They had the same kind of, they were working in the consultancy field. The filter was also the state where you came from, the city where you came from. So clearly with regard to education, with regard to background, they were equal. And yet there were differences in how women and men presented themselves on LinkedIn. And is that something that leads to the recruiters preferring men over women? What were these differences? The first difference we found was on their portrait, the picture that you put up on LinkedIn. So I'll show you a sample. Now, when you look at these portraits, these are portraits picked up from LinkedIn. The one difference that you can see is that men present themselves more formally in their portraits as compared to women. You can see that the women's portraits, pictures are taken in a more informal setting. So you can see, for instance, greenery in the background and so on, whereas the men seem to be more professionally dressed up, giving an impression that they are more serious about their work. The other difference that you can see is in the smile. Women show their teeth more compared to men. Now, what that does is that while it makes them appear more likable, it also makes them appear slightly less serious. The third difference, as you can see from the portraits, is in something known as head canting, tilting of their head. Now, whether it's the selfie culture, which is to be blamed for this head canting, or it is a general evolutionary paradigm, women tilt their heads either to the right or to the left more compared to men who look straight. Again, something that conveys the impression of being submissive, which may lead the recruiter to believe that women are not as confident. So there are differences in full smile, head canting, and eye contact. The second differences we found were in self-promotion, wherein men wrote more number of skills compared to women. in terms of accomplishment, awards and honors were listed more by men compared to women. And in terms of the About Me section, the summary length of what men wrote about themselves as compared to women, there were again significant gender differences. Women tended to use communal traits like I'm a sensitive person, I'm nurturant, I'm a team worker, more than men who use more agentic words like independence, capable, assertive, achievement, and so on. So this sort of leads us to believe that women are more modest when it comes to promoting themselves, when it comes to presenting themselves on their resumes, which is perhaps something that we all, and I urge you all, the students who are all listening to me, to be a little mindful of your resumes, to be a little more mindful and not be shy of putting yourself out there just as men do. Really, the time is now. We've been talking about empowerment. Empowerment truly is the process of enabling an individual to think, act, and gain control of one's destiny. Empowerment and women's empowerment is not just a women's issue. It is a people's issue. It is something that impacts the GDP of our country. As both men and women, we need to challenge gender stereotypes, whether as parents or as co-learners in a classroom or at the workplace. So on one hand, we have books like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which talk about differences between men and women. But how true are these really? Are men and women really so different? Are women better, really? Are women genetically better at soothing a sick child, washing a dish, ironing a shirt, or even cooking? And are men really born more adept in matters of finances, government, and science? Or is it our socialization? We do not have different brains. We do not come from different planets. We are all humans. And if we were not bombarded from birth with the idea that we are supposed to be different, we just heard about fairy tales and what that does to us, the whole pink and blue and the gendered expectations that parents have, cars and dolls and so on, that leads us to think that we are different. So truly the time is now. We need to not just break these gender stereotypes, we need to build skills for the future. And for my women folk out there, one piece of advice, which is actually borrowed from Hillary Clinton: you may not be the brightest, you may not be the best on the table, but be the most prepared on the table. And that is certainly something that women are very good at. Be prepared. Create an online presence using platforms as LinkedIn. I just spoke about how we are not doing enough. Use self-promotion. Do not be modest, and be very careful about the portrait picture and the photograph that you use. Embrace sisterhood. Let's not pull down each other. Let us mentor those of us who are in a position to mentor other young women. Let's be there for each other and embrace our sisterhood. That's my most important message on World Women's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ahuja. It's been interesting to listen to some of those studies that you have done in terms of role of body language in perception of recruiters. And it reminds me of the time when I was part of the selection of candidates for the FMS interviews. And year after year, I have seen in the SOP, where there was a column that write about your extracurricular activities, the men would write, pages, several paragraphs, and the girls would keep it blank or just one or two. And every time I'd ask the girls, haven't you participated in any of these activities? They said, yes, ma'am, but I did not win a prize. I said, but it does not talk about whether you won a prize or not. So tell me now. And then they will say that, okay, I participated in this and this and this. And these are very bright girls with a similar engineering background that they came to FMS. So it really strikes me that it's still going on, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it is gyms or any other. Also, when we talk about recruitment, even at FMS, I found that there were companies who refused to take women, and they felt the stereotype was that it was very tough sales job and they may not be able to actually do well there. And our girls actually fought argued, asserted themselves, and although they took more boys, but they did take girls. So assertion is very important, and to be able to put your point across assertively. So it's not just Sudha Murthy who had faced gender discrimination, it is still there. So we need to understand there. And it also brings to light some of my experiences with NCERT way back in 1980s, when I was teaching in the Department of Psychology at that time in Delhi University, that I was going through a chapter for class 12. And all the examples given by the main author was negative about working women. And that's the point, that's the time when we actually put our foot down and said, you must have guidelines. This is a very impressionable age when if the child's mother is working, you would have all kinds of negative feelings about the working women. So yes, gender stereotypes, whether it's related to what Dr. Ahuja had talked about in terms of STEM disciplines, it's still there. And it is indeed a problem, female labor force participation, which statistics already has talked a lot about it. So thank you for all your observations regarding many of these points. We now, I think we move forward, and I'd like to invite now the next speaker, the next esteemed panelist. We have Dr. Ms. Shalini Diwan. So I invite Shalini Diwan to kindly express her views on this topic.
Thank you so much for all this invitation from JIMS. It's a great pleasure to be here. With such eminent speakers, panelists, it's a pleasure. And happy Women's Day to all of us. So what Women's Day, we talk about, I feel every day is a Women's Day. Why is that we are placed on a pedestal or a dais on just one day, and then, it's snatched away from us for the rest of the 364 days? So many of award functions, felicitations, activities hover around us. But then again, we are debarred of it for the rest of the year. And this only emerges again in the next year on that particular day. So I guess, we need to appeal to all the platforms and all my women folk out there. We deserve more than what we are, and we need to be celebrated all 364 days also, because we are the reason for existence of human race. We should celebrate our existence, and we should be there, to make sure that we are not glorified just for one day, but actually, taken seriously for all the year round. So it's a pleasure being here. And I feel education is important, and empowerment is women supporting women. Now coming to the topic of empowering women of India, role of education. So let's understand what is education. Well, education is a milestone of women empowerment, because it enables them to respond to challenges. It actually helps them confront their traditional roles and changes in their life. India is supposed to be a superpower, and the education with the educated women, they're going to play a very major role in this development of our country. So let me categorize education into two aspects. The two spectrums that I talk about is bookish education versus holistic education. Now, what is bookish education? It's great to read all our subjects. It gives a major exposure to the world. It connects us to the world. It gives insight to all that is happening around the world. But then, and most important, it makes it called literate, which we always want to be called. But how many of us are actually literate? Because I see a lot of people are literate, but they're illiterate literates. And I'm really sorry to say it's there all around. So it's the stress that I lay on is the holistic education. Now we need to have a mind of our own, voice our thoughts, ideas, and opinions, stand for our own rights, and have a courage to say no. Be our own spokesperson. Both these education, bookish and holistic education, go hand in hand. The power comes from knowledge, and the strength to use is the knowledge. So empowerment means where people are equal as citizens, they're respected and confident. Educating women brings self-esteem and confidence. So here, I would like to say, let's rise up from being jealous, being backbiting, or into backlashing judgments, because they create a very negative impact. And here we need to grow up. We need to have education plays a great role in this, because we need to create a community which is supporting, empowering, positive, and inspiring. So bookish education actually helps us give that change. Let's be the change makers. Now coming, from all that I heard from my fellow citizens, fellow speakers today, that, it is very important that education is important in urban and rural areas. But with my organization, Global Fighters Foundation, we work on education in the villages. I do not mean urban villages, because already there's a lot of handholding there. I talk about the villages which are far away from the cities, which actually need a holding hand. So there is where Global Fighters Foundations penetrates, because we want to give them a very positive mindset. We want to give them an environment which is conducive for them to come back to school. A little small story, let me begin with how Global Fighters actually work in the villages. We started with around 20 children, all male students, and just one classroom. And now we have 300 children, 60% girls, 12 classrooms, and proper drinking water. But above all, what we did, we first created toilets and washrooms for the girls, because that is something which is never taken care of in the villages, especially. Wherever you see a great building come up, but the toilets are always a makeshift toilets. So here we need to give, to the girl children in the villages, those, confidence to come to school, because once, they attend puberty, that is the time when they pull out of school because of lack of facilities of washrooms. So first we created proper washrooms for the girls, boys. We created 4 washrooms so that there is no dirt for washrooms when the girls are there in school. This gave them the confidence to a lot of parents in the villages, to the village folk out there, and the girls started pouring in. And now I must say that we have 60% girls, and the girls who are topping in our schools are the girl child students. Examples that I will give is that 86% is the topmost percentage, overall percentage that we have for the students of class 10 and 12. The girl from our school topped with 92% in Haryana board, which is, a commendable thing, because given all the shortcomings that they face in their homes and, the things, if you give them a very holding hand, a very positive environment, and a good, classrooms effect, they actually want to be in the mainstream of the society. They do excel. So this is something we work on very, very closely. And now we are also trying to create more schools, because this has become more or less like a model school. So we want it to be replicated all across different villages, because that is where, because if rural education is taken care of, then only a country is going to be developed, because otherwise we will always be a developing country, because the core of our country, that is in the villages, is not taken care of. So here is where we need to work. We are always seeing a lot of, management schools coming up, a lot of private schools coming up in the cities. But what about the villages? Why don't we just touch them? There are children who actually want to be part of this mainstream of the society, but who's there to take care of them? So here I appeal to everybody, anybody and everybody who actually wants to, not say charity, but actually, connect, give a holding hand, and support us, me, my organization, or as many organizations that are there who work on education in the villages. Please come forward and help them out, because that is where we need to actually work. Now, after talking about this, I will also talk about the menstrual hygiene that we take care in the school. This is something which is a very taboo in India, be it in urban areas or in rural areas. And rural India, people just don't want to talk about it. And it's such a pathetic state where, these girls are made to use grass, sand, very tattered clothes. I don't know why. We are living in the 21st century where exposure is so much. But then again, why are these basic things not taken care of? So we are raising these drives. We are conducting these drives for the girls. We make them understand the concept of menstrual hygiene and why it is important for their whole health quotient. And here, I've seen that initially the girls were very hesitant to talk about it, but now, when you talk to them one-to-one, when you talk to them in a very, you explain them the concept of health and hygiene, they do come forward and they are taking this muhim forward with us. So here we need young people to come forward, girls and boys, both to connect with us and take this forward, because this is where, if your health is good enough, you actually can do very good in your day-to-day life and, make a society which is very well educated. And as we were talking about education, girls actually, they help you educate the society, because if a girl is educated, then, the whole society eventually gets educated. Now we also, the young children, that is from class, from nursery up to class 5, we talk about bad touch and good touch. Here we train them that what is that they should differentiate between a bad touch and a good touch, because this is something they need to be aware about. This is something they need to know. So this is important, that if self-awareness is there, then a lot of things, will be taken care of. And you should be more vocal with, if you feel across that something good is not, or you don't feel something good about people around you, you should be vocal about to tell it to your teachers or to your parents and stuff. So it is very important to teach them about good touch and bad touch. Then in those villages, when we are conducting our workshops, we are also talking about nutrition, because nutrition value is very important to understand. It is, we see a lot of people, a lot of children actually eating junk food. So I say, okay, junk food is good enough, because it's more tastier. But again, it is important to first take care of your nutrition and then going for a little bit of junk food, which everybody likes to eat. But the concept of nutrition and the balanced diet is very important. So we conduct a lot of workshops where we tell the girls, especially when they attend puberty, that it is very important to make sure that they are having good eating habits. They are putting nutrition into their body, because that is the time when they are growing up. And this in growing up years, it's very, very important to be, very healthy in your day-to-day life. Then, and then when we are also conducting women education plans. Now, what is women education? Women education is where we conduct at the village level. Here, this campaign that we are taking forward is for the women in the villages, who we educate them for 1 to 2 hours in the afternoon when they have a little more time on hand. They're through with their morning chores and their evenings are a little taken care of. So in the afternoons, we conduct a 1 to 2 hours program for them, which is more of Hindi, English, and maths. This is conducted by 11th and 12th class students, so that, they can understand their day-to-day things. They feel more confident about their day-to-day work, and they can read their newspapers. They feel confident and they feel very, elated and very wanted about, yes, I can do this. So these are very small things. If you give them this power of confidence, that is where they emerge out to be better human beings. And that is what they will pass on to the generations coming. And we also conduct, chef programs for them, because we want to have the delicacies of villages coming to the urban areas. So we conduct programs for them because they feel very wanted. They feel they're part of the society. They feel that. So this is education. So for me, education is not just bookish education, but it's a holistic education where, your mind, body, and soul, everything is in sync with you, and your education goes hand in hand. That is the book education and the holistic education. So here, it is such a beautiful sight when you see that in a house, where the women are doing their homework because they are going to school, and the children who are back from school are doing their homework together. So it's like a holding hand to both of them. It's a beautiful sight to see. And this, actually promotes literacy on a very good level. So coming, the urban, now when I'm talking about rural India, we are working a lot, we are also taking campaign hygiene forward. Now, what campaign hygiene talks about is health, sanitation, and hygiene. Here, again, we tell the people in the villages, let's come forward and clean up our own villages, because it is there where, it's our own village. It's there where we are living. So if, and there's a very simple thing. You don't need to clean up the whole village, or you don't need anybody, authorities, to come forward and clean it for you. You just, a group of 4 houses together can clean up certain areas, and the whole village gets clean. So actually what I try to say is education is something where you need to relate to day-to-day life. You need to relate to day-to-day things, because the activities that we are doing, that is also education. So it's a holistic thing where, our day-to-day life is taken care of, and plus we are also learning quite a few things in school or through our televisions and mobiles, and that is what we work on with Global Fighters Foundation. Now, coming to the urban areas, I lead a lot of platforms with women in urban areas also. But it's very pathetic to see that, a lot of them are actually holding many degrees, but the confidence level is zero. Why? Because you need to stand up for yourself. Now, your bookish knowledge or your school knowledge is there with you. But then again, what? So it is an appeal to the mothers to, make sure that when the child, the girl child is born and she's growing up, the values that you inculcate into her is more important, because that is going to be the foundation and the backbone of her growing up years. And, how she grows up is what she's going to be later in life. So that is where her ideas, her opinions, her thought processes are going to be emerging out. So it is a time that, we emerge out of this, and as I say, education is a key to advancement. We are all going to be advanced. There's a very small thing that, a lot of people say, modern. What is modern? Modern is not being about, maybe puffing a cigarette or going to pubs and all. No, you need to be very traditional with your values, where, you can relate to your culture, your tradition, your lifestyle, but be very modern with your outlook. The outlook and the thought processes is where you need to be modern. So it is the women I urge to, that let's be very traditional with our values, but very modern with our thoughts and processes. So here, coming to this, I would also like to quote a few things. The best quote that I always love to say on every platform is by Gautam Buddha: you cannot serve from an empty bowl. It means that self-love, peace, calmness, happiness has to be within you. And how's that going to be possible? Because you have to be content inside. A very small story from a very personal level. I had never thought I would be heading so many platforms way back, I would say around 15 years back, because for me, priority at that time was my children. They were growing up. My husband was on his path to attain, stardom and doing so much in life. But I was holding back, only holding back, and I was learning also simultaneously. So it was not that, back in the backhand, I was learning, I was reading, I was exploring myself, but my priorities, I was taking care of that time. Now, when my children are both married and they are happy and they're settled and everything is in control, now, whatever I learned over the time, I'm putting it all into the platforms. And best is when COVID-19 happened, I was not there watching Netflix, Amazons, and so many shows coming on. I was actually exploring, because that is the time when I started my YouTube channel and my talk shows. I was confident about facing the camera, but I was not confident about talking so much. So that is where I rehearsed myself. I made sure that I could do it. I started making my inspirational 1-minute videos where I could concise everything, so that I could put a very, large perspective in a very small words. Or I started my Lucido Skin and Hair Care, which is my homegrown brand of skin and hair care, which is absolutely effective in healing. No chemicals, no preservatives was my take, that I'm not going to use any of these. So I had to formulate things which are going to be very effective and which are going to make a difference in our skin and hair. So these are the things that I formulated, and that is what I call empowerment. Empowerment is something which, you inspire yourself from within. It's a motivation that has to come from within. So I keep telling women, okay, it's important that you do everything that you want, but please have some time for yourself, because that is a time where you need to explore your talent. You need to explore your skills, and that is a time that you're going to be working forward. Yeah. So, and I would say that the world is changing, and so are we. We are now, the world is seeing us in a new light. We are positive and evolved. We are strong and vibrant, inspiring and beautiful. Keep the momentum going and creating a new chapter and a new era. And I will just leave you with a very hilarious quote by Twinkle Khanna, who says, like Ganesh Visarjan, Women's Day comes once a year. So the fund is unlimited, but it's just once a year. And the Women's Day quote in Ireland was very beautiful. Just support a strong woman, because she might be the only one, your one army woman. So just, make sure that you respect your women, give them that confidence, support them in all their endeavors. And plus, I would say, women, just inspire yourself, motivate yourself, because you are the one who is going to be supporting each other. And it's the holding hand that we give to each other. It's the support that we will take us a long way. So women folk, just get ahead, and we are going to be there together for each of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dewan, for this excellent, interesting sharing of your experience working in your foundation. And it's interesting that you brought clarity about why it's very important to give essential resources to girls at the rural setup, whether it's clean toilet with water, which is extremely important, but also giving them training in terms of good touch and bad touch, which is important because then they can, have idea about how to recognize gender-based violence. And when they grow up as women, they're able to then, not experience gender-based violence, or at least stand up against gender-based violence. And it starts at the girl-child level when you're giving those training. And I think now many schools are giving these kinds of trainings as well. Menstrual hygiene, I think, is extremely important for girls. But it's also important to give them affordable sanitary napkins. And you may have read about this grassroots innovator, Mr. Muruganantham from Tamil Nadu, who has developed a machine, a very cheap machine to manufacture sanitary napkins without.
Here, I would just like to interrupt you. Is that a lot of sanitary napkins that are done at a very affordable, but the quality of these napkins is really bad, because we have actually procured a lot of them from different sources. But again, we need to make sure that affordable is good enough. But here we need to show that the quality is also taken care of, because you just cannot be passing out damn thing to the villages just on the thing of affordability. So here we need to be a little careful about.
Yeah, but this is a person who's been awarded, for the grassroots innovation of manufacturing this, for developing this machine. And he trains self-help groups to use this and to give affordable napkins, So this has been tried and tested, and it, I think, cost just about ₹1 or something, per pad. So I thought I'd just talk about this, because he's been written a lot. There's been a lot of, media coverage about the work that he has done. So it's essential that we understand that what is empowerment. Empowerment differs from, in terms of rural women, in terms of rural girls and urban girls. So we need to understand what is empowerment for rural girls and what is empowerment for an urban girl. So we need to understand that context, there could be difference in terms of the context itself, as you have.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So now we go ahead and we talk of, I think Dr. Reena Marwa is here. So I'd like to invite Dr. Marwa now to share her views on this interesting topic. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Preetham, and sincere thanks to Dr. Seth, Dr. Sharma, my fellow panelists, colleagues, students, and congratulations on today being Women's Day, and congratulations to JIMS for taking up this initiative. And of course, the theme which is there by the UN for this year is to break the bias. And that, as many predecessors, many speakers before me have already mentioned, that this bias begins very, very young. And then it gets so deeply embedded that it takes a long time to really take it out, because then it's handed from one generation to another. So, just to quote Mary, Kay Ash, the US pioneer in women's cosmetics. And we know that women's cosmetics industry, you know, how they want to look beautiful for the men around them is like worth only skincare is worth something like 63,000 crores. And Mary Ash, you know, she had said that aerodynamically, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. So women really shouldn't be able to get their wings out. But the bumblebee doesn't know that. So it goes on flying anyway. So what is really women's empowerment? And I think it's important to understand it from the way that a lot of women authors have written about it. And that is what I'm just trying to present, a little synthesis of what we understand by women's empowerment and what we really should understand it as. So it's in terms of the capacity to make choices by those who have been denied this capacity. And I remember when I was a consultant for UN Women on a couple of consultancies, I met this gentleman and he said, I had gone for an interview and they asked me like, you know, why should we take you for this role in UN Women? And he's, what do you think is really women's empowerment? So he said that, I said that it's, you know, if a woman gets a choice of, you know, that she is going to reproduce or not reproduce, her reproduction rights really spell whether she is really empowered or not. That is women's empowerment for me. So the question of choice is only meaningful if we could have chosen otherwise. Hence, empowerment would mean creating the conditions that will expand the possibilities for the lives that we can imagine for ourselves, for the life choices we can make, for the life chances that are available to us. Sometimes those chances are just not available to us because parents have to choose between educating their children and whom are they going to educate. And we have seen that in several societies. For the life chances available to us, rather than having to live lives that have been imposed on us by the laws, customs, norms of our society, which we did not really have any say in. If empowerment is not to remain a purely individual phenomenon, we would want to see changes in these wider social constraints, not just changes in the lives of individual women. Therefore, there are a number of reasons why the term empowerment really needs to be resisted. So when empowerment really emerged as a concept among grassroots movements, they did not really try to qualify it. They saw it as a holistic phenomenon which embraced different aspects of people's lives. And this business of talking about economic empowerment is in fact a product of the compartmentalized ways in which academics and policymakers think that the world is divided by disciplinary boundaries or by sectoral responsibilities. Hence, many people seem to equate economic empowerment only with changes in the economic dimensions of life. But if we look at it in a more pragmatic way, economic opportunities should be viewed as providing a specific entry point into the possibility of progressive change. So has the child been educated? And that can happen in different spheres, just as progress on the political front can also open up new spheres, new possibilities, which are not just confined to the sphere of politics. And there is a strong tendency in economic empowerment literature when we go through as academics to equate women's empowerment with their participation in the labor force. The belief that just getting into some kind of paid work will lead to their empowerment without even knowing what kind of work it is, how it impacts on their unpaid responsibilities, and where it positions them in what remains a highly unequal distribution of income and wealth. Also, if we acknowledge that gender intersects with other kinds of inequalities, we will recognize that the likelihood that paid work will empower women is likely to vary considerably along the socio-economic hierarchy. And once we acknowledge that women are located at the intersection of inequalities of class, of caste, of race, of ethnicity, legal status, and others, we begin to locate this desire, this quest for women's empowerment within a broader movement for social justice. And here we find that there is no singular category named women which can be isolated from what goes on in the rest of society. We have a ministry for the Northeast. Why do we need a ministry separately for women of Northeast? We are looking at that separately in our educational institutions. So there are certain intersections beyond just empowerment which we need to understand. And an increase in participation doesn't really signify that there is equal representation. Women do constitute about 40% of agricultural labor, but are they controlling the land which they till? They are controlling less than 10% of the land. They are excluded from the formal economic sector, which also shows the exploitative nature of society which we live in, which is based on gender partiality. So I was doing a study in Bangladesh for UN Women on women's empowerment, and we saw that women's political representation was increasing at the village level, at the block level. But actually, who was really speaking? Whose voices were being heard? They were just the mouthpiece for their men who actually, were the ones who were telling them what to say. So is that really empowerment, just being on that particular panchayat committee? Similarly, education of women continues to be frowned upon. The UN suggests that when girls reach secondary school, their consecutive enrollment rates decline significantly because only 39% of countries have equal percentages of boys and girls who are enrolled in secondary education. In developing countries, 35 to 55% of girls are forced to stay home from school to take care of their younger siblings or the house, which makes the female student attrition rate much higher than the male counterparts. We also know that there is SDG number 4, Sustainable Development Goal, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. And when I told Dr. Seth that we are doing this short-term course, so what is being discussed since yesterday is all about inclusivity, that it's so important to have equitable quality education. And what we as administrators need to do is to really sensitize our students to the communities in which we live, so that we are also empowering the communities, which are helping to sustain our academic and institutions, and we send our students for experiential learning to the villages for some time, just like bank officers are expected to do so. So as we said, despite the fact, there's no denying the fact that there has been progress, yet there are areas where at least 48 to 50% of girls remain out of school. And we know that at least 15 million girls are not in primary school right now as compared to 10 million boys. And we know that in adolescence, higher number of girls often drop out because of early pregnancy, because of other issues. There is another study which has been done by Mishra and Sarangi of 30 Asian countries, which shows that just increasing the budgetary allocations for empowering women in health, education, economic and political dimensions would be productive and growth contributing. So policy, and I think we have spoken about this earlier as well, that policies need to be developed to reorient health, education, and employment related aspects of Asian countries. And what needs to be done, of course, already mentioned by fellow panelists, that education-related policies need to be oriented to attract more girls into the primary level of education. Health-related policies need to be oriented so that women can live longer lasting lives and healthier lives. Thirdly, labor market policies such as recruitment, promotion, wage, and income. And like we see these, international institutions, there's always a line at the end, whether it's fellowships, whether it's working for the World Bank, whether it's working for the United Nations, they will always say that women will be preferred, women candidates will be preferred. So we need to have this kind of preference also given in various other corporate sector and other institutions. Then employment specific policies in services sector also needs to be reoriented so as to increase female employment, and also safeguarding of these policies should be ensured. Again, parliamentary electoral policies need to be reoriented to increase female participation in national parliament for better impact of gender parity on economic growth, because it is very well known that when women contribute, they contribute positively to economic growth. And I would just like to conclude by a quote from Ayn Rand. She says, "The question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me." So thank you very much once again, Professor Preetham, Dr. Seth, colleagues, for this opportunity. And yeah, looking forward to if there are any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Preetham,
Yeah.
the last speaker,
Yes.
Namitha Rajput, she's unable to get away. She's at an award ceremony. She's from Aurobindo College.
Yeah.
And she's being feted by the police. She's in charge of an NGO. So the doors are all locked because of security reasons. She's not able to get away from the hall. So I'm afraid we'll have to miss her talk.
Okay.
But we can go ahead with the Q&A session. Sania, you have any questions?
Yes, sir, I have questions. I'm just speaking them out. Yes, so my question that I've received from the audience for Kanika Ma'am, if Kanika Ma'am is there, I see
Yeah, she's here. She's
okay.
here.
Okay, ma'am, so the question that I've received is, as we know, women in rural areas get less exposure to build their persona by getting effective leadership skills, which will ultimately impel them to empowerment. So what is the foremost thing that can be done regarding this in the upcoming days?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. As we know, women in rural areas get less exposure to build their persona by getting effective leadership skills, which will ultimately impel them to empowerment. So what is the foremost thing that can be done regarding this in the upcoming days?
I think the new education policy, NEP, has made some very, it's quite a visionary statement really, and it remains to be seen how it will be practiced. But as far as NEP goes, the entire idea of a hybrid classroom, of taking classes which are online, taking classes by virtual means and getting the entire academic bank of credits may allow women who are, of course, you need connectivity, may allow women who are living and residing in the villages to have access to quality education. I think since we're talking about empowerment through education, that is the first thing to be seen. Do women, especially the ones who are in the rural area, getting access to a quality education? While we talk about places like Delhi University and we look at our diversity, and we are rather proud of the fact that at least 60% of our students come from outside Delhi, and a huge percentage of those are from small towns and small villages all over India, the numbers are still very, very small. There's a lot that needs to be done, and because of the high cutoffs, we have to sort of turn many, many women and men away. So if this comes into being, that women are able to afford education by means of MOOCs, by means of hybrid education and so on, perhaps that will be one step. The other thing that needs to be done is then making them job ready. And we see huge gaps. And as I showed in my presentation, while the female literacy rates are still becoming higher and higher, they're inching very high, especially when we compare them to the 1900s and even when we got independence, which means that women are being educated more. They are getting an education far more than what they were in the last decade. Yet they're not getting enough jobs. So what is happening? What is preventing women from getting jobs in terms of leadership? Do we have some role models? Are there women in leadership capacities who can mentor these young women, especially the ones who are coming from the rural sector? I think that will go a long way. So NGOs who are working in this sector, if they can work by sort of connecting the women who are already doing very well with young women who are trying to grapple with the realities of organization, getting a job. I spoke about the invisible door, the glass ceiling. Getting a job itself is very difficult. Sustaining a job is even more difficult. Progressing up the ladder is that much more difficult. So if there are good women mentors around who will handhold them, who will teach them the ropes, I'm sure these young women are going to be as successful and as effective and as excellent as any man.
Thank you, Dr. Ahuja. Yeah, any other questions that we have?
Yes, ma'am. I have one more question for Shalini, ma'am. The question is, which is more important today, according to you, making opportunities for women or making women capable to build their own opportunities? What is your view on this?
Well, I would say creating your own opportunities. But again, we will come back that this comes with education. And again, going back a little step back is again, creating schools for these girls to come to this. When your base and your foundation is not there, how do you expect girls to come to school? So as I said, we need to create that base function and foundation, because once, they're educated, they get a right environment, a positive environment to come to school, they're confident, they want to study. I have not come across any girl in my life who doesn't want to study. But again, there are shortcomings. So if we take this shortcomings, we take care of them and we give them that conducive environment to study. One, they are going to be studying. Second is we can create job opportunities for them. And that is only possible when the industries which are small and micro industries and medium scale industries, they go to the villages, because lots can be done in the villages. We don't need to have all industry in urban areas. So these small things can be done in the villages, and where these girls and these women get they get their employment, they get a holding hand, they are financially more independent. Because when I was doing a golden cocoon platform where I was supporting around close to 150 women artisans, we were giving them that holding hand. Whatever produce they were making at their places, we were marketing it for them at the price that they were saying. So that is why they could financially be a little more independent. They were taking care of their children education better, their lives were much better. And first of all, they were feeling confident, because if the girl is confident only is when she is giving an environment. So first we need to work at the base level, where we need to create schools for these girls, give them proper education, have these, everybody wants to work in the urban areas. Everybody wants to be in private school. But, we can take out, some of us need to go to the villages also. And it's not that, the government needs to have those schemes where, a certain amount of pay scale is set for the people, or they're encouraged to go to school, in the villages and make them study there. Be the teachers for them, give them that exposure that they're looking for. So the base to anything is education. Education leads to empowerment, and then it leads to skill. So I would say create your own skill, because that is where you are going to create a whole new life for yourself and for your children and for the society on whole. And that is how a country is going to develop.
Yes, true, ma'am, true. We have questions, and so I think considering the time, we can take up one more question. That's an open question. Basically, no name was written. The question was, what is that one most important institutional and societal change that needs to be done in concern to our topic today?
Anyone from the panelists would like to take it up? One important change vis-a-vis the role of education for women's empowerment in India?
Well, I would just like to say is we need to be our own inspiration. We need to motivate ourselves first. It's our, it's our society, it's our home where we need to get that environment and that motivation. And once we are motivated, we actually can motivate the society on a whole, or our fellow beings and people at large?
Well, I would say that the slogan "Women's rights are human rights," given by feminist activists, is important because it explains that in general, women are a disadvantaged group, and gender mainstreaming of human rights is required to raise their status in the quest for gender equality. And I think what is very significant as value of education lies in, as many of the panelists have also mentioned this, that it's the ability to alter the women's consciousness so that they analyze critically and may question the traditions, the practices, and the hegemonic structures of the society, to make them independent so that they can bring about change in their everyday lives by asserting themselves through a positive understanding and appreciation of their identity as a woman. So the need is to overcome these deep mental blocks about efficiency, about capacity of women, and to provide them with the unique space to foster so that empowerment actually takes place. Yeah.
I'd like to just add. Oh, yeah, just like to add. I would say that we need more he for she, more men sort of batting for women. And I would have been happier to see a few men in the panel as well. So that's what I'm missing today. Yeah.
I agree.
It should not be really women, talking about women's empowerment, because unless you let us break the glass ceiling, yes. So that's just a suggestion for maybe next time Women's Day. Thank you.
In fact, I'd just like to conclude by what Sheryl Sandberg, the author of Lenin, says in terms of women's empowerment. She says, the promise of equality is not the same as true equality. And she also says that a true equal world would be one where women ran half of our countries and companies, and men ran half of our homes. So I conclude with this. And thank you so much, all the esteemed panelists today.
And can I just add one more thing to it?
Sure, please.
Yeah, there's a very beautiful quote which I read. It says, woman has the most unique character, like salt. Her presence is never remembered, but her absence makes the thing tasteless. So I think women are very important in our society.
Yes. So
okay, Professor Reena, here's a little participation from my side, but this is absolutely on the lighter side. A day before Women's Day, a day before my wife's birthday, a day before our anniversary, I get very strict instructions from my daughter. I got to be on my best behavior, all the do's and don'ts. And try as I much, sometimes I do falter. So, and there's nobody to hold my hand. But then that's on the lighter side. So I suppose life goes on, and we need to care about and respect women, mothers, daughters, our wives, and make sure that they have all the opportunities in life, whether it's career or personal opportunities. And, that's paying respect and,
I gave up my opportunity of getting an award function at the BJP office today morning at 10 o'clock.
Oh,
I missed it. Yes, I missed it because I had a commitment here. Okay. But I said awards keep coming, but being here on a panelist with such eminent speakers, it's most important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your commitment to women's issues, women's cause.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Preetam ji. Thank you, Kanika, Shalini, Reena ji. Thank you very much for being here today, for supporting us. And, I'm sure we'll cherish all the thoughts, the perspectives, whatever we have, and we'll certainly, it'll stand us in good stead in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. On behalf of JIMS Kalkaji, once again, I convey my thank you for an effective, successful, and productive discussion. And before I invite Dr. Ashok Sharma sir, Director JIMS Kalkaji, to deliver the vote of thanks, I would like to introduce sir to you all. Sir is a professor.
Sanya,
Okay.
it's not required.
Okay.
Like I was throughout, like listening through the entire galaxy of the speakers, and it has been really wonderful discussions that we had. I truly acknowledge what Reena ma'am actually pointed it out. Like in the panel, we need to have few of the males also to give their viewpoints. But definitely, Said sir and myself are here to give our viewpoints also. And it's not only the government; it's the responsibility of us all to really acknowledge the contributions, and definitely like it is be acknowledged also. Even the corporates have also actually now woken up to this particular fact. And whether it is the HUL, whether it is the ITC, whether it is the like Jubilant, I'm associated with them. So whether they are doing a lot of work, and a lot of other corporates are also doing a lot of work in this aspect. So that is a very good sign. And in fact, as it was being rightly said, like when we talk about the woman empowerment, it's not about a particular thing. It is actually a way that we are actually going to think. It is going to be a thought process. So once we are going to have that thought process in place, the rest of the things automatically are going to be aligned along with it. And definitely the education is one of the most important ways and tools because of which it has been done. I'm pretty thankful to Reena ma'am, Kanika ma'am for sharing their research and their consultancy experiences, like the way they have really worked across and put across certain points in for the forefront. I'm thankful to Shalini ma'am also. Like her work is definitely, it is appreciable. Like she has been doing a lot of work at the grassroots level. That is something required. Like we as an academician, we have got our own role and responsibilities to put across the things in the perspective and take it to the people, and definitely to our students. And we are hopeful that those things are going to gradually going to trickle down to the bottom level also. They are going to touch upon those things to the people who are surrounding them. And I would also like to thank Preetham ma'am, like she wonderfully organized and the entire session. Like her opening remarks actually set the tone, which made the entire flow to be going across seamlessly. Thank you, ma'am. Like again, definitely, I thank you all for, despite your busy schedules, like being here today and enlightening our students regarding the various set of our data, also the various perspectives also, and the various things that need to be doing and taking care of. Definitely will like to convert this into small workshops so that gradually it gets embedded into their personality. So not merely the talks, it becomes something which is more actionable. Like the Kanika ma'am talked about how you're going to present themselves, like Reena ma'am talked about the various things that needs to be done, and Shalini ma'am really the good touch and bad touch and certain things that needs to be done. So it's not only those small kids, even the students, they also have to be told about this, because they are the one, they are our ambassadors who are going to actually take all these things together, and definitely together we are going to make a mark. Like again, like when we were thinking and perceiving about this particular seminar, so Chairman sir, our Amit sir actually gave us the motivation. Yes, we need to doing it, and doing it in this same date itself, not before and after. And so we try to put across the entire thing, and Dr. Seth has been the torch bearer of this entire event, getting all you people here together in one platform, interacting, getting all these things together is just because of his hard work. The entire thing that we are seeing, the learning that we are getting out of this, just because of it. Thank you very much, sir, for getting all those things in shape. And definitely, like Chairman sir is always showcasing us a path, and we are trying to like go across onto that path itself. And definitely my thanks to Dr. Sane also for putting in the effort, and the entire IT team, like who has been working relentlessly to actually ensure the entire event goes flawless. And in the last, I would like to thank all our students and the faculty members who are ensuring that this entire event goes on, and there is going to be a great learning which is going to come out of it. So thank you everybody for just to ensure that we all are actually putting across the things in shape and making a small difference whatever way that we could be. So this is my urge, and I'm pretty sure like we would be having more sessions, more workshops in this area, so that we can get across on some really different perspectives to our students. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
With this, we are closing the this session now, ma'am.